I think when you start to, it's the perspective. I think that's the biggest thing. So oftentimes most people will pick up the phone or send the email because they want to change something aesthetically, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's usually what picks up the phone. But if I can switch the perspective to about energy and taking care of yourself in the long run, then there's much more success.
Welcome to Leap Like Me, the podcast that helps you to be bold in life, to stretch what's possible, and find more adventure, joy, and purpose along the way. I'm your host, Lisa Hawashi. I'm a life coach who can help if you're ready to take a new, more authentic direction in life. On Leap Like Me, we share the inspiring stories of people like you who have made a brave leap and offer practical tips for how to set your leap in motion too. Let's get started. Hello, everyone. This is Lisa Hawashi, and welcome to Leap Like Me. I'm so excited to talk with our guest today and share her with you. Our guest is Alexandre, and she is a registered holistic nutritionist. She's a certified personal trainer, a life coach that is a certified coactive coach, and a corporate wellness consultant with a holistic approach to wellness. And originally from Toronto, she now makes her home in Barcelona. So I met Anna about 7 years ago at a lunch for women entrepreneurs in Barcelona. And she made an impression on me. And recently, when I found myself struggling with my physical health, and particularly like coming out of like the young years of early motherhood, and it's like, I wanted to fit into my clothes, and I also wanted to feel strong, especially going into, I'm almost 45. So I wanted to go strong into my 50s and my 60s. I just realized I needed some outside help with that. And I realized I could hire Anna. And so we've been working together since about the last 3 months or so.
3 months.
Yeah. And I have learned so much. I've had so many ahas. And, I talk a lot with my clients about energy because, sort of like the well-being parts of energy, the habits of energy, because I realize that whenever we want to make a significant change in our lives, a change that is maybe going to take us in a new direction, or is one that's really important to us, it's like we need the startup energy to do it, and also the energy to maintain it. And so I felt like talking about that in like the physical realm and also in the nutrition realm would be really interesting to do. And Anna is an expert in it. So welcome to the show today, Anna.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm really excited.
Yeah, excited. So, and also Anna has her own leap story, and I thought it would be really fun to just kick off our show by hearing a little bit about Anna's leap. So she's originally from Toronto, but here she is in Barcelona.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually from Hamilton, but nobody knows what that is if you're not Canadian. It's just outside of Toronto. And I moved to Barcelona about 12 years ago. It's interesting. I just wanted to change. I just wanted to travel Europe a little bit. And I have dual citizenship because my family's Portuguese. And I just thought it'd be really fun to live in Europe for a year. And I was going to move to Paris or to Lisbon. And for some reason, all this weird stuff just kept pointing me to Barcelona. And I even had this dream that I was living in Barcelona and I'd never even been here. And I know this sounds crazy, but in my dream, I said to my friend, Lori, I have to go drop my headband off in my apartment in Barcelona. Not sure why, but that part of my dream later was Via Augusta, where my first apartment was. I know it sounds nuts, but that's what happened. And Lori was the first person ever to visit me, like a couple months later. So I was just, all these odd things kept pointing me there. I had hired a coach myself, and I was thinking, okay, should I stay in Canada and keep building up here? He's like, well, if you keep building up too much, you're not going to move. And I was like, I'm going to move to Portugal maybe. And he's like, oh, I'm going to Barcelona if you want. And I was like, what? And so all these things kept pointing me. And so I just came here one day for job interviews. And then I went back, sold my house, and a few months later moved. But yeah, I meant to come for a year, and 12 years later, still here. Yeah.
And as part of that, you also started your own business once you got here,
did.
right?
Yeah. So I had interviews here. I was working as a coach and trainer nutritionist as well in Canada, but here I was starting from zero. So I started working in gyms and I really didn't like it because I'd been working for myself for so long and the industry was very different. So I just decided to just go for it and start. And it did take a while to pick up because I didn't know anybody. So it did take quite a bit to get my client base going, especially because at the time I wasn't doing much online work. But over time it did pick up, and I started, and then I quit any job that wasn't, working for myself. Took about a year.
Hmm. And so now, well, I'm curious, what is life and business like for you, like kind of on the day to day in Barcelona?
It's up and it's changed. COVID had a big impact on my industry. So I'd say, a lot of my corporate work, for example, I do a lot of coaching and nutrition workshops in the corporate setting, and very few companies kept that going during COVID. Some did. A lot of them were cutting their budgets quite a bit. That's at least what my experience was. And with fitness, with gyms closed, it really hurt those clients. And online, it was really fascinating because a lot of people in my industry, we were giving stuff for free at the beginning to motivate people. And then it kind of went from 2 months to this, 2 year thing. So a lot of people got really used to paying really little or nothing for online fitness work. So it was a little bit interesting there. And so I did have to build up a lot of stuff in the last year again.
Yeah.
Hmm.
All right. Well, I love hearing just kind of, I mean, as a fellow business owner, I'm kind of like imagining behind the scenes, like what it has taken for you to like be agile with all of those changes and to be resilient, like in sort of facing all of
Mhm.
them.
And I
So
had a really big lesson. So, because I think your listeners work for them, right? Or entrepreneurs, a lot of them. So,
some
I
of
got,
them, uh,
okay.
many
Some,
are professionals and like working for
okay.
companies, and some are entrepreneurs and artists. Yeah. So we have
I
a,
got really lazy with marketing.
you
And
got
that was
what?
really lazy with marketing. And that was one of my biggest takeaways from that period of COVID. So I had a really solid client base, but most of it was in person. And I got really used to going to do a workshop somewhere, like a health food store or a club and then getting clients that way. And then that was it possible. And I realized I had slacked on like my newsletter, on my social media, and all of my marketing. And that was a big, probably the biggest lesson I learned is you never ever doesn't matter how full your client roster is, you can never get lazy with marketing. So if anyone works for themselves, yeah, that's a big,
Mhm. To be able to pivot, yeah, or to
yeah,
have various audiences you're marketing to in different ways. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and so, as you navigate all that over the last 2 years, I mean, we've all had to like
Mhm.
find and refine like our health habits that are going to support us. What were a couple of things that like kept you that you felt like you leaned heavily on or really sustained you during this
In the
time?
last couple years specifically,
Mhm.
um, hmm, I would say I mean, I work in health, in health and wellness, but it's just been such a part of who I am for so long. Even before this, I was a dancer, so it was just since I was a kid, it was so important to me. And not being able to walk for a couple of months, like outside, really, it made a really big impact in my mental health. So obviously, of course, I know that movement and what you eat is going to affect your mental health even more than your physical. But having that sort of taken away a little bit, I noticed just how important it was. And now, even when I speak to my clients, like that's the way I go. I'm like, yes, it's so important for your physical health, but we can never underestimate the importance of both of those things for your mental health. Because as we saw, when we couldn't move, people got like massive depression. I mean, there was more going on with like human contact and all those things, but it's crucial. So for me, making sure I moved every day, no matter what. I bought a little trampoline, so anything I could do to just keep moving, and that was huge. And not maybe ate a bit more than we normally do during those couple years, and just being aware of also how that can impact us in myself. So I'm super honest. I was like, I had a lot more stuff that I normally would have.
Yeah.
So
Well, and remind for listeners who may not be familiar with what happened with the Spanish lockdown, et cetera.
it's because
Um,
ours was much more strict. We couldn't leave for 2 months.
you couldn't leave
Yeah,
your apartment for 2 months.
no. So, I mean, we could go downstairs and get bread or go to the grocery store, but that was it. So it was really interesting for myself, like seeing my friends in Canada. They're like, we can do this. And I was like, you guys are allowed to hike.
Yeah.
Like, I'm literally in jail here. So I was getting really angry at them. Yeah, so we couldn't leave at all for 2 months, right? So that was really interesting. That's why I was huffing and puffing going to the grocery store because I couldn't even walk. So if you live in the city, it was a little bit
It's really intense.
challenging, right? So yeah, that was one thing that was like, oh my God, if you don't move, it really impacts your mind.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. So, I'm curious about like just in terms of your work, like around health and nutrition, like what are some things that um I don't know, you're paying particular attention to or you're starting to notice are coming up as trends or as things that are particularly important or exciting right now?
I think okay, I think the most important thing that I tend to focus on with my clients that doesn't um I think it's been that way. Yeah, I've been doing this for 20 years, and I think this is what I'm always going to focus on is there's always so much information, which is positive. It's also confusing that there's so much information. And then there are all these trends that come and go. So I think that the most important thing, what I focus on is just, yes, there are a million ways to eat, and some ways might be better than others, but maybe not. The most important thing is being consistent. So whatever way you're choosing to eat right now or move, just be consistent and just make it easier for you. So I think a lot of the times where I see people is they get really hung up on perfection, or this might be the best way, or my doctor said I have to eat this way all the time, or my friend lost weight doing this, or this person gets a lot of energy moving this way, or my neighbor did CrossFit and now she looks like this. So all those things can be great, but I think just find something that you actually enjoy, that you can stick with, and just make it work for you. So if 4 times a week is optimal but you can't, fine, make it work for you 3 times. So just making some of the complex stuff easy, I think that's my biggest focus
Mhm.
when I work with clients. And then I'd say for trends, I do like two. So mostly I don't like to talk about trends because they frustrate me a lot. The trends, and I'm like, oh my God. However, two that I like, and I hope that they're here to stay, and I think they are. One is the importance of blood sugar balance. We never talked about this the way that we are now. So we've talked about it before with, diabetes, for example, or some metabolic disorders, but not just in the day-to-day lives of everybody, of how important it is to regulate your blood sugar levels for weight loss, but also for energy and to reduce cravings. And so I think that is really exciting to me, that where there's so much constant research now on this, and that it's becoming mainstream, that you can find it in a magazine. And the other one is the importance of strength training for women.
All right. Both of these have been very relevant to me,
Yeah.
like in my work. Like you've definitely brought them to my work. Um, so maybe we can go into a little bit more detail about those.
Sure.
And I just like offer my own experience here because um I just think that so many people are kind of struggling with these things and kind of like what you said, that like since there's so much information out there
Mhm.
that we kind of think that like we kind of already know this stuff, or like I'm already doing what I'm supposed to be doing, or I can just keep DIYing it. And I think that for me was like a kind of a shift when I decided to hire you, was that I was like, I've been struggling with this for a long, long time. And actually, it has a real impact on how I feel day to day because I am so discouraged about like how I'm
Mm.
eating or how I'm feeling. And so it's like, I have to change something about it. And so, like, this seems like a good strategy to try. Right. And so, you, as part of your package, you offered like both the strength training, which we could
Mhm.
do via Zoom, which was good
Yep.
because I live like an hour and a half north of you.
Yeah.
Um, and then there was the like nutrition part. And to be honest, like when the nutrition part, I was like, well, she offers that as part of her package. I can always learn something. I was like, but I don't know how relevant it is to me because I feel like I eat really well.
It's so funny
Um,
because you never told me that. She's gonna make me do this, whatever, fine. I already know.
Because yeah, I kind of had this idea that you hire, I mean, for most people I know who have hired a nutritionist, it's because they have like gut issues that are really impacting them, right? Or they
Yeah.
have or they really have like a big weight goal or some other like health, situation that seems like more important than the one that I had.
Mhm.
Right.
That
And yeah,
happens a
what?
lot.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I think, I studied nutrition because I had a lot of gut issues and I didn't know what was going on. And I was already eating quote unquote healthy because I was working as a personal trainer for years before this. And I had so many digestive problems. And that's why I just studied holistic nutrition. I went to a naturopath and it changed my life. And I was like, okay, people need to know this. It's not just about, you know, protein, it's just not about a macronutrient. There's so much more. And so I do end up working often with people who have digestive difficulties. And because I have a background in fitness, a lot of people who either want to lose weight or gain weight or lose fat, I should say, is a better term, or gain weight. That tends to be what most of us think nutrition is for. Sort of if you were to hire a coach, but there's so much more. It impacts everything. It impacts your mental health, productivity, your energy levels, just optimal performance. Like we put expensive gas in our car because we know that it's going to make a difference. But when it comes to food, we don't look at it as fuel. And that's exactly what it is. So it's going to affect all areas of your life. And also sometimes there's just things about how to make it flow easier for your family. So you know that there are healthy things that are going to make you feel good and your kids feel good, but how do you even plan it in the middle of your day? Right. So something that gets pushed aside often for a lot of people because it's not an illness or no one's trying to lose or gain weight. So those tiny little tweaks actually have a massive impact on your health and your family's health.
Hmm. Yeah. And so what I noticed was that, like when we started working on the nutrition stuff, like you had me make a food vlog and then we reviewed it, to see like where some tweaks could be made. And I mentioned to you, like the main issue that I was having was like in the evening after the kids went to bed, I would want to like snack on chocolate or like, I'd have like these cravings and it didn't make me feel good about myself. It wasn't like a nice way to end the day. And it was also like coming on the end of putting like the whole
Mhm.
dinner time, put them to bed, which just like left me feeling exhausted, which also did not make me a very like patient and nurturing mother, like at those moments,
Yeah, it's hard.
And so I like didn't really identify that issue as a nutrition problem until I started talking to you.
Yeah, because
And
it's
I
the blood sugar work that we talked about at the beginning. So if we start our breakfast, I almost always start with breakfast first when I work with clients, because if you set that up great, then the rest of the day flows a lot easier. And most of us don't balance our blood sugar levels in the morning, and then it's really difficult the rest of the day. We're going to have crashes in energy. We're going to increase cravings. And also it leads to emotional hunger, which is oftentimes what happens at night because we give, especially moms are constantly giving. And then at the end of the day, you're so tired. So if you have that emotional, craving, which is up here, there's like hunger's down here and emotional is up here. Plus, if there was some issues with blood sugar during the day, that's when the chips or the cookies or it's usually some kind of crunchy thing or some kind of sweet, creamy thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and so like what are you talking about when in terms of like adjusting that blood sugar level? What does that look like on like as a food example?
I would say the most important thing. So I try not to give too much when I do interviews because when people try them all, it's like the too much information.
Right.
But I invite everybody who's listening to take a look at their breakfast and make sure it's has enough fat to keep you satiated, protein to balance your blood sugar levels as well as the fat, and don't go over the top on carbs and choose carbs correctly. So you want to have at least 20 grams of protein at breakfast time. This is, I'm generalizing, depends on your activity level and your body. I probably have around 30, 25 to 30 at breakfast for protein. And then fat, you need to make sure you have enough fat. And for carbohydrates, you want to choose good ones. So, it could be oats, it can be fruit, can be part of that. But most of us end up having a really high carb breakfast, which is refined bread. Maybe we'll put some jam on toast or something and a glass of orange juice. And that's just going to send your blood sugar levels like spiking and crashing. Often with women, I see not enough fat at breakfast because they're so afraid of fat. And then you're not going to stay full longer. And fat is actually what calms down your hunger hormones. So if we're not having fat in the morning, you're going to start to have cravings already throughout the day. And even at night, if you don't have enough, the research is really interesting that if you don't have enough protein first thing in the morning, you're going to have cravings throughout the day, especially at night. So that starting with enough protein and enough fat is really key. So that can look like a lot of things. It could be a couple eggs with some sauteed veggies and a piece of whole grain toast. A smoothie is the easiest. But again, a smoothie, they have a very specific formula because sometimes there's like five, there's a banana, 2 dates and strawberries. And like, that's like more sugar than a glass of wine. So, you don't want to start that way. So you need to make sure you have enough protein in your smoothie, same thing, enough fat. It can be avocado, it could be nut butters, it could be MCT oil, fiber from acacia fiber, which is tough to find in Europe, but you can also just add chia and it's inexpensive. So you need to start your morning with enough, and the smoothie's kind of really, really easy, especially if you're trying to get out the door.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, the tweaks that we made to like adding more protein in my breakfast, like pretty much, took away like the cravings at night, which I was like stunned by. And then, it's like, and then I noticed that I wasn't having these like complete crashes in the evening. Which is, it's so funny. It's one of those things where when it was happening, it was really noticeable. And then when it goes away, you kind of just forget that it ever happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not happening anymore. And that has a really big impact on me and on my family, and on my health,
It's
because
huge, that change.
yeah. So, well, and just speaking of breakfast, I remember you telling me that like breakfast was one of the hardest like habits that you found people to change.
Yeah.
And so it just reminded me that like, you in having all these different roles as a nutritionist and a trainer and a coach, like, a lot about habits and how to help people change their habits, cultivating better habits, getting rid of not so good habits. And so I'm curious if you, like, what are some of the principles that you might want to share with us about how to start a new habit?
I'd say the easiest way to start, well, first decide you're going to do it, right? So oftentimes we're like, yeah, I'm going to try. If you start saying the word try, then it's not, none of us, it's not going to happen, right? And this applies to, I always say like, yeah, I'm a coach and I work primarily in health and wellness, but there are areas of my life that could clean up some habits there, like everybody else. So whatever area of your life you struggle with habits, the first thing is to decide actually we're going to do it. If it's the language we choose, so like, I'm going to try to do this for breakfast, it's highly likely you're not going to do it. So if you just decide to do it, it's okay, I'm deciding this is what I'm going to have for breakfast. That's already a massive shift in your, in your mind, your conscious and your subconscious mind. That's one. A second thing is, if you can hook two habits together, right? So a breakfast we have to eat. So this is a sort of a different one, but if I'm trying to get people to do mobility work, which is nobody does it. So I try really, really hard. Like,
what is mobility work?
Mobility work is because we do strength training, cardio, flexibility, and mobility this is not scientific at all what I'm saying, but if you think of, like the oil in your joints, like the Tin Man, mobility work is going to kind of help you with that in the long run. So, oftentimes we stretch if we have pain, but actually it might help you in the moment. But what we need to do is strengthen those muscles and work on the mobility of those joints. So we get these huge endorphins from cardio. So it's hard to get people to do that. So I try to
have you just repeat. It just cut out for a second. We get a lot of endorphins. Do you want to start over there?
Yep. A lot of endorphins from cardio, obviously from lifting weights, especially if it's like heavy and we start to feel like Wonder Woman or, He-Man from lifting them. That's also awesome. But mobility doesn't give you that. It just feels kind of nice. So it's like the most beautiful thing to do, but the hardest thing to put in practice. So if you can try to hook that habit with another one. So if you're already a runner, let's say, then when you come home, hook that habit to the run. Or if you have a nighttime routine, try to put that into it or into your morning routine, right? So if you're starting to get a new habit, try to hook one that you already have.
Yeah,
I would say it's a really good way. And
I've heard of this one in James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. I think he calls it habit stacking. Yeah.
So it's great, right? So that's the easiest way. When it comes to making changes in food habits, it's not necessarily, it doesn't really work that way, I find, because I mean, we're already eating, right? So how can we make different foods a habit? So I say start with small steps. So often we can read a bunch of articles. We have a supplement pharmacy at home. We don't even know why we have it in the end. And we try all these like superfoods and these things that can be quite expensive. And then we don't do any of them. So if you can just start with one small, like maybe if 30 grams of protein seems like nuts to you for breakfast, because right now you're eating 5, all right, let's up to 10. Let's get 10 consistently. Then let's get to 15, and go from there, or just change one part of your breakfast, or just say, okay, I'm only focusing on breakfast for the next month.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So just get one habit solid before you go to the next one, because I find with food, most of us try to change everything at the same time. It doesn't work.
Yeah. What happens? Do you see?
You just stop. Because first, if you're like, okay, I'm never gonna eat bread again, fantastic. And then you walk by a bakery in 2 months, you lose your mind, you eat everything in the bakery. Right. So that doesn't work. Also, there's no like good or bad foods, right? We've also put a lot of these negative connotations on food, and they shouldn't be. They're neutral. There's foods that are going to give us more energy and foods that are going to rob us, but that's not necessarily true. Let me rephrase that. All food is great. And there's things that have been disguised to look like food that aren't food, like, chips and highly processed foods. Those are very different. They rob you from energy, but once in a while they might bring you joy. So if it's like a big deal for you to have that once a month, cool. So if we need to make those little changes with food, is to start to be aware of how they're going to affect you, and start understanding maybe the why. And we can't do all the things at the same time, because we'll just stop.
Mm-hmm.
And then the negative voices start, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I suck, I can't do this, why can't I stick to a diet, this is so basic, I can't, and the negative talk starts. I find also with women, men will experience this as well, but because women, there's so much emphasis on what we're supposed to look like. Men receive this as well, but not obviously to the same amount. So the average little girl still today at the age of 9 thinks she should be on a diet. So we've been looking at food and talking about all the things it can do to our weight for years. And so many of us also go up and down yo-yoing. So if you do a diet, you lose the weight, it's not good for you, or you can't sustain it, it's going to all come back again. And you're going to feel like crap about yourself. And so I'm trying to like take, that completely out of when I work with people. And like my industry has done some harm there, I think,
Mm-hmm.
by focusing like food and weight, like the only part of the conversation, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it just doesn't work. I mean, also anybody can buy a magazine for €5 and follow it. It doesn't work, because you have to make it work for yourself and incorporate things you like. Like if you really hate broccoli, I can't recommend you eat broccoli. Right. Now you have to eat some veggies that I'm not going to.
Right.
No, but you have to do things that work for you. If I have certain clients that have a lot of business meetings at lunch, and so they go out a lot. Well, I can't tell them to bring a packed lunch. Right. So I have to find creative ways to get all the things that they need for their energy and their health that actually fits their schedule, while maintaining things like I always ask clients, if you have kids, is there some kind of ritual or fun thing you do with the family? We have to keep those things. We also have to remember joy. Food is joy. Food is experiencing with other people and sharing. And it can't just be this, broken down to macronutrients. It's such a big part of celebration as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So all that has to be working for you. So if you're always dieting,
you lose out on that.
Yeah, you lose it. And then you're just like sad.
And what do you feel like, among your clients who like really succeed and make progress with their goals, what do you feel like are some things that are different from them between the ones who do not do so well?
I think when you it's the perspective. I think that's the biggest thing. So oftentimes most people will pick up the phone or send the email because they want to change something aesthetically, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's usually what picks up the phone. But if I can switch the perspective to about energy and taking care of yourself in the long run, then there's much more success, right? So your butt, motivation for your butt to perk up, great. And if I'm doing a squat with you, I'm not going to talk about your knee health, right? Because it's not going to work in that moment. But over time, you can't just be worried about that thing. It's not going to keep you going, right? So we have to look at other motivation, which is lifting up your kids or being able to, whatever all that is, and focusing on that and learning how to eat for you. Because what I need is not what you're going to need. What I needed 10 years ago isn't what I need now, right? Especially women, because hormones, you might need different things at different times of your cycle. Then there's, menopause, which thank God we're starting to talk more about openly, right? So you have a lot of dietary changes there because we have massive hormone changes. So what do we need at this phase of our life, and listening to our bodies and eating and giving it what it actually needs. So the people that have the most success, A, is perspective. It can't just be aesthetic. And B, because that's also not really great for your mind, but it doesn't motivate you. And B is how does it, learning to listen to your body, because this is why I now always do the two things together with a new client, or the coaching as well, because I've been doing this for so long that I would see someone for a year, they achieve all these goals, and then 2 years later, they're back. They didn't sustain it. So I was like, well, why is this happening? Because it wasn't at the time, like years ago, I didn't understand how powerful or important it was to make people learn to listen to their body.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you have that, if you can learn the difference between real hunger and emotional hunger, and checking your energy levels, are you having those cravings at night? All of those things, paying attention to those, you can over time just listen to what your body is asking and start to give it what it needs.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's going to sustain you long term.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because they will change.
Sorry.
They will change. What you need will change.
Right. Yeah. That's interesting that you bring that up as like the sort of deeper, longer term skill that you're helping people to learn. Mm-hmm. That one's been coming up a lot for me as well. And just thinking more about the ways that we get disconnected from our bodies, mm-hmm. and how can we teach ourselves to listen to our bodies better? Yeah.
It might mean for someone changing the way that they work out. It might mean, so for example, when I first moved to Spain, I tell this story a lot. I'm from Canada and I really like wine. So it's very expensive in Canada. Yeah. When I first moved here, and I would go to it's very expensive. We get very heavily taxed on alcohol. And lunch,
and it's very cheap here. We just have
very cheap. So lunch was, menu del dia. So you get like a starter, a main course, and a dessert for, now it's a bit more money, but at the time it was like 12 euros. And you get water or wine. And I was like, why would I pick water? This is crazy. Right. And it's good wine, right?
Well,
it's not like,
then they bring you a whole bottle of wine to your table.
Yeah.
If you're like two people.
I have to drink it because it's so expensive. And I like it. So it was, and then also I had started dating someone. So you end up going out more. And I just really wanted to enjoy Catalan culture. So someone's like, well, you have to go to this town. And then if you go to this town, you have to eat this dessert, or, so I did a lot of that over a year. Shouldn't say years, maybe like 5 months. And I had bought a button-down shirt at the beginning of this spring. And by the end of the summer, I couldn't do it up. I was like, well, that's interesting. So I'm just going to, go back to working out and eating how I normally eat. And it didn't work. The weight wouldn't, the fat wouldn't go down. And it was really hard for me. I was 30, which I now realize that's not a big deal. But at the time, I was like, oh my God, I'm 30, this is it. And it stopped working. So I was like, okay, well, how can I change the radio station? Okay, well, I have bigger boobs. Great. So I'm going to dress to make me feel better about that, and try to, say something positive about my body versus something negative. I'm going to, I'm not going to stop enjoying foods that I like. At the time, my partner that I was with, he has a little girl, and I was bonding with her by baking a lot. It's all very healthy, but still we're having, much more muffins than I would normally have. And I didn't want to give that up either. So I kept doing all those things. I started working out. I started doing more HIIT, lifting more. And just by relaxing around like my relationship to food and to movement, then everything changed. Mm-hmm. And that's when it just kind of effortlessly came off. And I don't mean like I just sat and read a book and my body changed. I was still moving and eating healthfully. But that perspective in my mind just changed, and then my body changed. And so from that day is when I changed completely how I work with my clients, especially female one, everybody, but I find that women have a bit more sort of subconscious stuff there with their bodies. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I think it's really important to just change, listen to what your body needs. And now I do even less cardio than I did then. I do a lot more heavy lifting, and that makes me feel good now. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
what's going to be like in 10 years, but
Yeah.
mhm,
Yeah. I think, by now, like most of us have been through like at least one of those
yeah,
changes, of like the 20 to 30 shift, the 30 to 40, like it seems like those are going to be part of our, as we get older and our
yeah,
adulthood. Um, I am curious to follow up with you about what you said about the strength training and like the specific concern for like when you're in your 40s and
yeah.
50s, like what
So
it,
around the age of 30, we start to lose muscle mass quickly, right? After 50, well, after menopause, it goes really quickly for women. So if you can in your 20s focus on weight training, awesome. You're building like almost like a savings account, right? Of this. A lot of us didn't. It's changing. So women now that are younger are doing much more strength training. When I was in my 20s, it was all about like cardio step class. I used to teach like 5 step classes a day and spinning. It's all about cardio. I was like, that's really destructive to your hormones. We didn't really know that so much at the time. But strength training is really important, especially now. So if you're listening in your 30s, it's really, really important to start. If you haven't, it's never too late to start. But if you haven't and you're in your 30s, it's going to have a massive impact for you hormonally. It'll affect your, perimenopause, osteoporosis. It's like the savings account that you're creating. In your
Mhm.
40s, if you haven't really done it before, I highly recommend it, because this is again where we're going to start losing muscle mass very quickly. And perimenopause, when our hormones are fluctuating so much and we start to lose bone density as well, you must strength train. And after menopause, it's essential. So it doesn't, sometimes with this idea of strength training as lifting really heavy, yeah, that could be part of it. Like I really enjoy that feeling, and I feel super tough and like I can do anything when I'm lifting those weights. That's like a really nice feeling. But if you've never really done that before, okay, we're not going to start with a barbell military press, but you do need to strength train. Every single person needs to, and women really need to strength train and stop picking up 2-pound weights. It's not going to do it. So there's things we can do with bands, body weight, but you have to really work on that. The body most of us are aesthetically trying to achieve ish. It's not from cardio. It's going to be from strength training. But for your health, to make your hormones happy and to slow down that muscle loss, and for healthier bones, you just have to strength train.
Mhm.
You got to figure out a way that you like to do it. Like I'm quite flexible in a lot of things, but this is one that I'm just not. You just got to figure it out.
Mhm.
And I say to my mom all the time, right? I was like, you just have to, we have to figure it out.
Yeah. Well, and so I'm thinking about like that there are kind of like a couple of moments when I'm working with clients where like energy is really crucial. So one is kind of at the moment that they're thinking about making a change. And like, unfortunately, and you may have experienced this in your own, is that like at the moment that we are knowing that we need to make a big shift in life, like whether it's like in our careers or moving to a new place, it's like often because things are really not working out for us
Yeah.
and we have like low confidence, we don't feel good. Maybe we've dropped a lot of like the good habits that we've had. Um, and yet we need good energy in order to like go forward and like
Mhm.
make some positive changes happen for ourselves. And I'm just curious, like what, even just kind of like overview kind of advice you would have for people who are in that kind of moment.
I'd say if you need to make a change, well, no matter what goal you have in your life. So if you want to achieve, like obviously a physical goal, we're aware of, how food can impact that. If you are making a change where you're going to a new job, maybe you're going to bump up, in the ladder, and you're going to have a lot more hours. If you start working for yourself, it's a lot of hours that someone don't realize you have to put in, right? Working on your business, no matter what, or if you're moving to another country, if you're leaving a relationship, if you're going through divorce, that's really important also to focus on your energy. So anything you can do to give you more energy. So food is fuel. So are we fueling your body, or are we putting, the cheapest gas we can in there? Or sometimes it's like you can't put gas, like oil in a diesel car and vice versa. So are we putting the wrong things for our body? It's not, the car's not going to go, right? So we have to think about all the things that are going to give our body energy. And then also, I'd say look at all the energy leaks in your life.
Yeah.
There's
I
so many,
often talk about energy leaks too.
yeah. We give like so many things that we don't need to be doing and we're doing, and they don't make us feel good and they're a waste of time. So like that's a big thing. I don't have time to work out. Okay, well, you do. We all do, because if you do otherwise, you have time to feel like crap, right? Like that's just the other side of it. So where can we find the time? Start with things in your day to day that that are just taking energy away from you. Maybe we have to like not have that friendship anymore. Maybe you do need to leave a relationship. Maybe, maybe we have to shut off social media. I know there's a lot of things that can take our energy, or tasks that we're doing that we can outsource, right? That maybe we were afraid to do. I would say to a lot of people, again, especially what happens a lot with women is, are you saying yes to a lot of things that you should be saying no to? That's a big one.
Mm-hmm.
And are you doing a lot of stuff at home that maybe your partner can step up and do more of? Right. So I'd say always start to look at those ways that are releasing energy that you can actually be giving to yourself.
Mm-hmm. All right. You hit on a really common one that I just want to get a few more ideas about from you, which is, I mean, I hear this as well with, I think that my clients who are moms, and especially with young kids, are like some of the toughest to like find time to do the things they want to, including working out, right? Or eating healthy. So what is some of your best practices for like how to find the time, especially when people are feeling super strapped?
Okay. So I'd say the best practice, first of all, moms like you guys are, you guys are like do like crazy amount of hours. You have 3 full-time jobs according to data. So, I don't know how you do it, because I struggle to find time. So, that's just very impressive. So I would say the very first thing is, do you need to actually have a conversation? 2 uncomfortable conversations usually have to be had. First is with yourself. Now, when I with a coaching client, sometimes if they're feeling stuck, I will send them, a question form. And one of the things is explain the relationship that you have with taking care of yourself and taking care of others. When I send this to women, quite often it's like an essay response. And if I send it to men, it's very little response, right? So again, it's just the society we grew up in, we're still in. There's a lot of things that need to change on both sides, right? So the first thing is, are you, what is your relationship to taking care of yourself and taking care of others? That needs to be evaluated, because a lot of the
question.
It's such a good one, because a lot of the times there's just this like bullshit, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this on your podcast, that we do because we think we're supposed to do, because I don't know, our moms and grandmothers and aunts did it. We don't have to do it. We can let that go, right? Like, in taking care of yourself is not selfish, but we have praised women as being selfless as this wonderful thing. It's actually not. So first, like, what is your relationship to taking care of yourself versus others? You have to take care of you first. So it's a really uncomfortable conversation to have with yourself oftentimes, especially if you're a mom, because quite often I hear a lot of guilt. They're like, every female client I've worked with has often said, not every, I would say a good 90%. I'm like, okay, you need to work out a couple times more, or, buy these products. There's a lot of, well, I feel guilty spending this money on me as opposed to my family, or this time away from my family. So that's something, and no man has said that. So they have other stuff that I hear that is more common, but this guilt is just not serving us, particularly women and moms. So have that really important conversation with yourself. Get a pen and a paper and write it out. A second uncomfortable conversation is, if you're not a single parent, is, do you need to have any uncomfortable conversations at home so that you can reach your goals? So if you have an awesome supportive partner, that's amazing. That's not always the case. So sometimes I hear, I had a client who was struggling to get her workouts in, but her partner every day would get up and go play paddle or go go swim in the morning, and she would stay home with the kids and get it done, and he would do that before work. And he was like, why can't you just work out? She's like, we have children. And it didn't occur to his brain. He's like, oh yeah, I can work out because someone's taking care of the kids. So if this is a dynamic that might be showing up in your home, whether it's the morning, whether it's, there might be some uncomfortable conversations that need to be had there as well,
Mm-hmm.
which often I hear from a lot of women that it's just easier to do it themselves and they want to avoid an argument. So they just do pick up the slack in a lot of areas, whether that could be with your spouse, sick parents, whatever is going at work. And then there's a little bit for themselves. So I think there might have to be boundaries set there.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third one is just like the really kind of almost like, I would say it's like not the like sexy steps, but the most important ones. Okay. So do you need to have your yoga mat next to your bed so that you remind yourself to do it? Do you need to just put an alarm? Do you have to, what are the small little things that can make sure you do this? Meal prep, just put it in your schedule and do it, So it might just be like little things that you need for you to make it work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that you can be consistent.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, the other thing that for me has really helped is, I think one of the first things you said to me was just like, you just have to make the time for the workout. So
Yep.
just like, look at the calendar, look at where it's
Yep.
going to go, communicate it to other people.
Yep.
And for me,
part of my job is accountability.
yeah. And for me, that ended up being taking time out of like my working hours, right? Like when you're a mom, you have like hard won hours that are just for yourself, and there's so many things that you could do with them. So it was just decided, well, instead of working, 7 hours today, it's going to be 6 hours because it's even less than that because I need an hour to work out and then a half hour to shower and have breakfast. And like, that's the way it's going to be, And so over time, it's been easier to like sustain that because it was a time that wasn't, like you said, the only difficult conversation had to be with me. It didn't have to be really with anyone else because that was an hour that I was in control of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's interesting. That's why I say start with the one with yourself. And this applies to everything, like it's not like I enjoy doing my tax stuff every quarter. I have to set up really good habits, So it's like
I have a checklist to help me do that. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I try so hard every month instead of waiting every 3 months. Like I'm going to put candles and I'll put it in my schedule. And if I don't put it in my schedule, like a block off I don't do it. So you just have to like make little steps that it's tell people. Oftentimes we have really supportive partners and we just assume that they're not going to support us because we don't even tell them that we are going to do it. For example,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and the accountability piece has been really great as well. I mean, that's something, that my clients can count on me for as a coach, but yeah, it's been great to like send you a text to say, here's my workout plan for this week. And then checking it off like through the week that is enough to like make sure that I get up in the morning to go do it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cause there's always a reason to not do it.
Totally.
Right? You can always find
always reason.
Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, Anna, I am so appreciative of you coming on the show and sharing with us today. I want to ask if there's any last thing that maybe we didn't cover or that you feel like you would like to share as part of this conversation.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is whenever I talk to anyone or a group of people that's listening about steps or different things we can be doing is to just really reinforce that if what I'm saying is this, but you're here, just don't get overwhelmed or discouraged. Just take small little baby steps. That's what's going to make that habit actually stick. And if we take small little steps consistently over time, then we will be this very different person, in a year. Whereas if we do these massive changes, it's really hard to stick to and we can't do them. And it becomes like, then we can really beat ourselves up about it. So just take, okay, so if you're eating way differently than some of the ways I recommended, that's okay. It's cool, So an apple from the tree is like the best thing we could do. And then an apple martini is probably like the worst. So the closest you can get to that apple, right? From the super processed, go there, right? So if right now you're looking at what you're eating and it's all super processed or ultra processed foods, and you're like, oh my God, how am I gonna fix this? Maybe go to some more healthy processed, right? And then over time towards more whole foods. So just take little baby steps. If you haven't worked out in a long time, start by walking. Like, I think, just start doing small little things that you can. And then the second thing is also don't underestimate the power of cooking your own food and going for walks. Sometimes that can make a massive, it's just that simple.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And at what point do you feel like for like a nutritionist or a personal trainer, like at what point might it be a signal for people that like they've run the course on the DIY front and it might be time to get some outside support?
I think if you are struggling with energy, no matter what you do, there's something that needs to be addressed. So that's a really good sign. If you've tried if you've tried a whole bunch of things and it's not working, I would say that's a really good time to get some help.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, okay, I've tried all these workouts, it's not working. Okay, so maybe you're not working out for what you need. Also, you could be eating, like I mentioned in my story, like really healthfully, whatever, but it's not what your body needs now. So I was eating, I didn't eat meat for 13 years. My body started, craving it. So maybe, something's off and you're really not sure what it is. That's a really good time to get help. And if
Mm-hmm.
you just need help, if it's overwhelming, like if planning dinner, which I hear quite often from parents, is like, but especially moms, like just a dinner every night that everyone's going to eat, everyone's going to like, no one's going to complain, and it's healthy. And I don't have to spend 3 hours. If you need help with that, that's a really good time to get help.
Uh-huh.
I
Like
think if
even
you
that
just,
is worth getting help
yeah,
with. Mm-hmm.
yeah,
It's
if,
true because I think part of listening to ourselves is like monitoring the distress that we're feeling. Even if we're kind of like, there's a judgmental part of ourselves. It's like, I should be able to deal with this, or this is like too mundane, or, I shouldn't be struggling with this so much. I think that we have to like listen and be like, okay, actually, this is causing me a lot of energy and distress.
yeah.
It's worthwhile to take care of.
And also, if you have a lot of pain, like if you're finding yourself without a very specific injury, if you find yourself going to a chiropractor all the time or physio all the time, but it's not a very specific, injury, or you've had post surgery, then you probably would really benefit from learning how to move your body and strengthen your muscles so that you don't have pain. So you don't have to, put the Band-Aid and those things are awesome. We need those, a team of professionals, but oftentimes if your body's just like tight, you're sitting a lot, you're in pain, you don't know what's up, things are crinkling all the time, could be a good time to take a look at getting help with movement as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I got to say that like a few months ago, sometimes like, having to do the physical things with my kids, like my body did not feel that strong. And yesterday I carried my screaming 3-year-old 2 blocks to school when he didn't want to go to school. And of course, I was embarrassed to have to do that in front of the other parents, but I was not embarrassed because I couldn't physically do it because I could now physically do it.
Yay! Honestly, that's such a common one. It's funny. That's such a common one. My kids now, like, isn't that the best, right? So sweet. So it's like the aesthetic thing's fine. They'll come. Of course they will. But like that you can actually make your life easier by taking your screaming 3-year-old to school. And okay, yeah, there's social stuff to that. But you could hold them, that you
Right.
can play longer, that you have less pain, that you have, you know, more energy, that you can do things like change the water thing or, carry
Mhm.
groceries better.
Oh yeah,
Those are
my
things.
husband showed me how to cut wood this weekend. Not very successfully. I'm gonna need your pointers on it.
We can do some ball slams, so we can work on that. Like, yeah, so I think those are the things like the day-to-day, making your day-to-day more efficient.
Yeah,
Mhm.
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I to wrap up, I just love to hear, if people want to follow your work or get involved in it somehow, how can they do that?
So my website is annaalexander.com, DRE. So Alexander DRE. And you can follow me on Instagram at Anna C. Alexander. You can
Yeah.
send me a message
And you've got
there or
Yeah, and Anna has really great exercises and also smoothie recipes and other types of
Mhm.
recipes that she shares on her Instagram. I love following her there too.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for being with us today and sharing all of your knowledge. Really special and energy.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.